few days ago now, one of the more trusted journalists when it comes to West Ham news, Jacob Steinberg, did an article on the Telegraph, and it was a bit of a Premier League roundup, a summary of what's going on at each team at present. And West Ham's paragraph was dedicated to Gianluca Scamacca, and that West Ham United have got no intention of loaning him out. Now, this is fantastic news because I was a little bit worried we would do it. I could believe it because it feels like Scamacca's been linked to Roma for a couple of months now, even before the season was even finished. He was being rumoured to want to go to Roma, and Roma were rumoured to want him. And that transfer, I guess it makes sense, but it is believable because on one hand you've got the Italian striker who's come to England, come to the Premier League, perhaps hasn't settled in as well as we would have liked, struggled a little bit in his first season, hasn't hit the ground running, second half of the season was a write-off through injury. So you can believe that Scamacca would be interested in a move back to Italy. Then you add in the fact that he's a boyhood Roma fan, that's ticking that big box. As for the Roma side of it, Tammy Abraham's out injured, they need a striker. Italy number 9 is currently in England and hasn't really settled in, so they could probably get him. The rumour is believable. And I think that's what worries me. The fact that the loan is the type of thing West Ham would possibly do as well. That was believable, and that's what concerned me. Because I think loaning him out would be an absolute disaster. But within the article it stated West Ham got zero intention of doing that. Now, as always with these pieces, it's not always what the article says. It can also be what the article doesn't say. And what Steinberg did not do is say that Scamacca is not for sale at any price. In fact, quite the opposite. He basically said that West Ham would not be taking a considerable loss on him. So we're perhaps open to selling him. But given that we paid 35 million for him and there's major doubts over Roma or any other Italian club really being able to afford what we paid for him, there's concerns that anyone can match what we'd be looking for if we were to sell Gianluca Scamacca. So the theory is that by default, because of West Ham's reluctance to sell him for cheap, for a bargain, and understandably so, because we don't want to loan him out, the only option is that Scamacca remains at West Ham next season. And the paragraph was rounded off by stating that David Moyes is still a big fan of Gianluca Scamacca's ability and talent. And I like it. I like this news from Steinberg because do you know what? I certainly don't want to loan him out. I understand some people's arguments. Let's put him to Italy for a year. Hopefully he has a really good season. And then when he returns next summer, he returns to West Ham. Moyes' contract will have come to an end. Moyes has left. We've got a new manager in now. We've now got a 25-year-old Scamacca who's had a really good season under his belt. Let's see what he can do at West Ham United. I do get that argument. My counter argument is we've still got to loan out a striker that cost us 35 million without any money coming back in to replace him. Our options would be, prior to replacing him, Mikel Antonio and Danny Ings. And it's not really, they're still two good players by the way, but it's not enough. We still need more. And I appreciate Mubama's still there. We'll get onto him in a second. I want Scamacca at West Ham next season. I'd prefer to sell him than loan him out. But again, the question is how much would we get? 25 million plus is what you'd be looking for. It's still a 10 million loss. Can we get 25 million for a guy that hasn't kicked a ball in 6 months? I'm not convinced. I think the best thing for West Ham is to keep Scamacca. Is it the best thing for Scamacca? Well, that's the bit that's open for debate. When he arrived, I was excited. I hadn't really seen loads of him. But bear in mind, we spent 18 months looking for a striker. We're now going to spend 35 million on him. There was a lot of hype around him as well. And journalists from Italy saying we've signed a top striker, one of the best upcoming strikers in European football. I got excited. I don't mind admitting, I got excited. And in fairness to David Moyes, he put him in the team, not straight away, but as quick as you're going to get from David Moyes. His fourth game in the Premier League, he started and he scored. And he stayed in the team. He pushed Antonio out of it. And now, bearing in mind, you have to remember this, Antonio is one of David Moyes' favourites. You know, he'd been in the side unchallenged for a couple of seasons now. Scamacca's rocked up, bang, on the bench. Scamacca's in the team. And Moyes doesn't do that with every single signing. Emerson had to be patient. Flynn Downs still has to be patient. Ariola's still waiting for a crack at the number one. But one or two players Moyes has put straight into the team. Paqueta went straight into the team. Aguerd went straight into the team. Scamacca, in my opinion, went straight into the team as well. Now, 3 goals in 11 Premier League starters, it's not a good return, right? Let's not pretend it's a good statistic. 8 goals in half a season. Now that sounds a bit better, doesn't it? When you take into consideration his Conference League goals, and he scored a couple of goals in the qualifiers, which it's still goals in competitive football. So you could still got 8 goals in half a season for West Ham. That sounds a bit better, doesn't it? I'm using the stats as how I like it, I guess. I'm massaging the statistics there a little bit. 8 goals in half a season doesn't sound too bad, but 3 in 11 Premier League starts, not too great either. But what I seen from Scamacca, what I seen from Moyes, is a manager that wanted to give Scamacca a chance and put him straight into the team. And what I seen from Scamacca was a bloody good player. But before I go any further, this video is in collaboration and sponsored by the OneFootball app, and it's the best place to keep up to date with all your latest West Ham news. Plenty of it at the minute. Mainly Declan Rice stuff. It's mainly the domino effect of Declan Rice as to who we're going to go and get with the money that we're receiving from Arsenal. But it's the best place to keep up to date. You get notifications for the teams that you follow straight to your phone as well. So when there's any breaking news, it comes up as a notification. Just click it, it takes you to the article, so you can get bang up to date with what's going on. It's completely free. It's free. It doesn't cost you a penny. All you have to do is go on the link below, or there's a QR code on your screen right now. To use a QR code, I don't want to be patronising, but go on your camera on your phone and just aim at the screen, push it, and then it will take you to the App Store, or use the link in the description below and get it downloaded to your device now. Not just phones, your iPads, get it downloaded to your device. So, excusez-moi, who do you support? You tell it who you support. You tell it which competitions you want to keep up to date with. Then whenever you load up the app, just like I do every single day, just like Gonzo does every single day, click on the bottom right profile. It's got who you've chosen to follow. So click on the West Ham badge. There's all your West Ham news. Got friendlies around the corner as well. We'll take on Bowling Wood on Monday. So pre-season starting. Keep up to date with all the news, all the gossip, all in one app. It's free. I promise you, download it, try it. You won't delete it. I promise you. It's a bloody good app. OneFootball app. Link in description. Back to Scamacca. I seen a top striker. I did. Not every game. Some games he looked lazy. Some games he looked disinterested, like he was frustrated, and it was frustrating to watch him. But there was also games like Wolves, where I was in awe. I thoroughly enjoyed what I seen. And I thought, here we go. This is why we've spent 35 million on him. This is why we've waited 18 months to get this striker, and he is performing. He was almost justifying the money and the wait, and I was excited to see what he could do. Then his injuries came along, and he hasn't played the second half of the season. He did not play. I think it match day 20 onwards in the Premier League, did not feature for a minute. 4 appearances on the bench, didn't come off the bench at all, been out injured. So has his first season at West Ham been a success? No, absolutely not. But I think there's potential. I don't think it's a complete disaster, and this is why I don't really want to sell him this summer, because if we sold him this summer, we'd have to take a substantial loss. I don't know what we'd get for him. 25 million maybe. I don't know if I'm being a little bit too optimistic with the fee. I don't know if I'm being a bit tight. I don't know how to price it, right? But let's just take 25 million. You've got a figure in your head. Take that. It's not going to be the 35 we paid. It's less than that. I don't really want to accept a loss on Gianluca Scamacca. I think there's a really good player there. I think you've got to be really patient with players arriving in a new league. I think he struggled a little bit with the physicality of it. I think, listen, does our football suit him? Not really. You could see that. But you've got to allow the manager an opportunity to adapt to the way the striker plays. Because the first half of the season, the best example is currently at West Ham as we speak, Lucas Paqueta. The first half of the season, it wasn't great. What we saw from Paqueta wasn't good. Post World Cup, we started to move Paqueta around the pitch. We started to adapt the way we played with Paqueta in the team. In the last 2 or 3 months, I was loving watching Lucas Paqueta in a West Ham shirt. I'm excited to see Paqueta next season. Now he's had a full season in the Premier League. Now he's adapted, and he has. The Paqueta we saw in May in the Premier League was different to what we saw in September in terms of how quick he was moving the ball, how little he was dawdling on it. The amount of times, I remember we played Everton near the start of the season, and he got the ball and he was surrounded by Everton players and then just nicked it off and willy-nilly, and it was continuing throughout the game. He was really struggling to get involved in it. By the end of it, he's wiser. He's got used to the Premier League a little bit, the hustle and bustle of it. Scamacca never really had that opportunity. He didn't have that time to get used to the Premier League. And I want him to be given that chance, and that means retaining him next season. And I understand people's reservations over David Moyes getting the best out of Scamacca. I completely get it. I have those reservations. But with the evidence of Lucas Paqueta, I'm hoping that we can do that. We can unlock that potential in Scamacca. Because if we do, he's a top striker. I think I've seen enough of him in glimpses to suggest there's a real talent in there. And I don't think we've seen it. Like I said, I think we've seen it in glimpses, but I don't think we've seen it enough. And I want him to be a success at West Ham. And I want us to try it next season. I want Moyes to try and get the best out of him next season as well. And that he should do. That should be his job. Whenever they sit down at the start of the season and come up with their aims for the season, probably avoiding relegation and getting to the knockouts of the Europa League, but there should be a thing in there that says you need to get the best out of Gianluca Scamacca. We've spent 35 million on him. You're the manager. Get the best out of him. It has to be something that Moyes has got to do this season. So when I see him being linked with moves away, I hope they're untrue. But when I see Steinberg suggesting we're not going to loan him out and we're not going to sell him cheap, well, to me that means he's got to stay because nobody's going to be paying the 35 million. So by default almost he's going to remain. Obviously that raises the question, what does Scamacca want? Is he happy staying at West Ham? Well, tough. You've signed the contract now. You've come to West Ham. Make it work. We need more from Scamacca. It's not just David Moyes' fault last season, but like I said, I don't think it was a complete disaster. Had he been fit all season, I think Moyes would have played him. I can't prove this. Like I said though, Moyes doesn't put every new signing into the team straight away, but he did with Scamacca, pretty much. He went in there and he stayed in there. Got injured, we didn't see him again. I think, had Scamacca been fit for the second half of the season, I think we would have seen plenty of him. I don't think we'd have seen as much as Antonio. I don't think we'd have seen as much as Danny Ings. Moyes has got his favourites. There's only one left that's undroppable. We know who it is. He's still in the midfield. He's undroppable. He's dropped Creswell for Emerson. He's dropped Soufal. And he's dropped Michail Antonio. Jared Bowen is also undroppable. Bowen and Souček are the two. I'm yet to see much evidence that Moyes is willing to drop them. And Fabianski as well, but I understand the inclusion of Fabianski. But those two in particular, Souček and Bowen, there's not much evidence there from Moyes that he's willing to drop them. But Antonio was considered one of the undroppables, but yet Moyes put him on the bench for Gianluca Scamacca. And I think a fit Scamacca next season could be exciting. We've got a pre-season. I'm hoping he's ready to rock and roll for Boreham Wood on Monday. I expect him to be. Even at the end of last season, Scamacca was doing his own little social media updates of him back in training and whatnot. So I'm hoping that with a proper pre-season under his belt, that we can tweak the way we play and we can get the best out of him. Because if we do, let's hope those Italian journalists that say you're getting one of the best upcoming strikers in European football. If that's true, then we can see it at West Ham. But I'll tell you what, loaning him out, we're not going to see it at West Ham. And in selling him, we're definitely not going to see it at West Ham. It's up to David Moyes to get the best out of Gianluca Scamacca. The other news was that Mubama's going to get a chance at West Ham next season. Makes sense. That's also believable. Why would that not be true? And this is good. This is what I'm hoping we see pre-season. Antonio's obviously away with Jamaica at the minute. They're doing well in the Gold Cup. Season starts on Monday for West Ham with a friendly. Obviously we'll have Ings, Scamacca and Mubama. Plenty of minutes for the youngster in pre-season to show us what he can do. Hopefully he grabs it with both hands. And I don't want to put too much pressure on Mubama because I speak of evidence. There's little evidence of David Moyes bringing any youngsters through at West Ham. There isn't any yet. Ben Johnson, Declan Rice, they weren't given their debuts by David Moyes. They'd already been put into the first team. Moyes is yet to bring somebody through from the youth team into the first team at West Ham. Mubama feels a little bit different. I think it's because for me he's had a bit of first team football. Easy games to give him first team football in, I have to say. It's dead rubbers where he gets his opportunity. But Moyes has had him in and around first team training for quite some time now, which not everybody is. Sometimes Scarles is in the first team, then he's not in the first team training. Mubama's been in the first team training and stayed in the first team training. So it feels like he's the only youngster at present I feel quite comfortable getting game time next season under David Moyes. And I'm looking forward to it. I really am, because if we can make him work, if he can step up, it'll save us tens of millions in the transfer market next summer. That is your replacement for Michail Antonio next summer. When Antonio goes next summer, Mubama steps in, done. A bit like what Brighton are doing with Evan Ferguson, saving them tens of millions in the transfer window. So it's pleased to see that there's a plan in place for Mubama. And like we said, Mark Noble's role as sporting director, he's got to have some impact somewhere. And if that is clearing a route for some players into the first team, Mubama's the obvious one. So that would give us our 4 strikers next season. Apparently funds are a little bit limited at West Ham this summer. I do believe that. We'll have to wait and see. But we don't need to buy a striker. That would help us out a lot. You know, bringing in someone like Harvey Barnes, focusing on the midfield. I'm okay. I'm okay with our front 4. Our 4 options as striker next season being Scamacca, Antonio, Ings and Mubama. I'm okay with that. Not saying you have to be. I get it why people have reservations or disagreement. I completely get it. You don't really need to convince me as to why you're not too keen on it. I do understand. But for myself, I'm alright with it. I've still got hope. I haven't given up on... I'll be honest with you, I've given up a little bit of hope of Cornet making it. There's talk Cornet is going to be seen as a striker. He could potentially be striker next season at West Ham. Not convinced. I've given up hope of Cornet making it work at West Ham. I've given up hope of Vlasic coming back and making it at West Ham. Part of me's given up a little bit of hope of Flynn Downs being in the first 11 for a long period. Scamacca, I've not given up hope yet. I still think Moyes would have played him a lot last season, and I've seen enough from him to suggest he's a top striker. Am I confident in it working? No. I think there's a big difference between hoping and being confident, but I've certainly got a little bit of hope. Scamacca at West Ham next season? Yes, please. Loan him out? Absolutely not. That's good news. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this rambling, please do drop a like on the video, subscribe to Hammers Chat. Catch up with you tomorrow.